The crystal chandelier above our dining room table cast fractured light across my mother's face as she delivered the words that would shatter my world. "You're no longer our daughter, Rachel. Pack your things and leave." But nothing could have prepared me for what happened next. The sound of military boots on marble floors, and my identical twin sister walking through those oak doors in a uniform I'd never seen before, with stars on her shoulders that shouldn't exist. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. The evening started like any other family dinner at the Morrison estate in Westchester County. My parents, Margaret and Charles Morrison, had insisted on these weekly gatherings ever since my twin sister Emma and I turned 25. They claimed it was about, quote, maintaining family bonds, but I knew better. These dinners were performances, carefully orchestrated displays of the Morrison family's success and status in our small but affluent community. I arrived at exactly 6:30, as always, driving my modest Honda Civic through the imposing iron gates that bore our family crest. The contrast between my car and the sprawling Georgian mansion never failed to remind me how different I'd become from the daughter my parents expected. While Emma had followed the predetermined path, business degree from Princeton, internship at our father's investment firm, engagement to Bradley Whitman from the Wright family, I had chosen archaeology, a decision that continued to disappoint them 3 years later. The house staff greeted me with the same polite but distant smiles they'd perfected over the years. Maria, our longtime housekeeper, gave me a subtle nod of sympathy as she took my jacket. She'd witnessed enough of these family tensions to understand the undercurrents that ran through every gathering. "Rachel, punctual as always," my mother said, not looking up from arranging white lilies in the foyer. Margaret Morrison was a woman who commanded attention without effort, her silver hair perfectly styled, her navy Chanel suit pressed to perfection. At 58, she still carried herself like the debutante she'd been 40 years ago. "Your father is in the study. Do try to avoid discussing your career choices tonight." The dismissal in her tone was nothing new, but it still stung. I made my way through the familiar halls, lined with oil paintings of Morrison ancestors, each one seeming to judge my choices from their gilded frames. The study door was ajar, and I could hear my father's voice on a conference call discussing quarterly projections with someone in Tokyo. Charles Morrison never truly stopped working, even during family time. I knocked softly and entered. My father gestured for me to wait while he finished his call, his gray eyes scanning reports spread across his mahogany desk. At 62, he embodied everything the Morrison name represented: success, tradition, and unwavering expectations. When he finally hung up, he looked at me with the same expression he reserved for disappointing business deals. "Rachel, how's the dirt digging going?" His attempt at humor fell flat, as it always did. "Found any pots worth more than your student loans yet?" "It's going well, Dad. I'm actually working on a fascinating pre-Columbian site in New Mexico. The pottery fragments we've uncovered could reshape our understanding of trade routes in—" Right. He waved his hand dismissively. "Well, perhaps tonight you'll consider Emma's perspective on building a real career. She's been making excellent progress at the firm." The assumption that I should follow Emma's path was a constant refrain in our family. Despite being twins, we couldn't have been more different. Where Emma thrived in boardrooms and charity galas, I found purpose in dusty excavation sites and ancient mysteries. Where she saw networking opportunities, I saw authentic human connections. Where she embraced our family's expectations, I questioned their worth. Dinner was served in the formal dining room, a cavernous space that could seat 20, but somehow felt cramped with just the three of us. Emma's absence hung over the table like a storm cloud. She'd been traveling extensively for work, my parents explained, securing international partnerships for Morrison Holdings. Her empty chair at the table seemed to emphasize my own inadequacy in their eyes. "The Whitmans have been asking about wedding plans," my mother said, cutting into her herb-crusted salmon with surgical precision. "Bradley's parents are eager to announce an engagement date. Emma's been so busy with her assignments that they haven't had proper time to discuss it. Maybe they should focus on whether they actually want to marry each other, not just when," I suggested, immediately regretting the words. My father set down his fork with deliberate slowness. Rachel, not everyone has the luxury of following their whims. Some people understand responsibility, commitment to family legacy. Following my passion isn't a whim, Dad. I'm contributing to human knowledge, preserving history. You're $30,000 in debt pursuing a hobby, my mother interrupted, her voice sharp as cut glass, while your sister builds something meaningful. The familiar argument began to escalate. My parents listed Emma's accomplishments like a prosecutor presenting evidence. Her MBA, her promotion to senior analyst, her engagement to Bradley, her ability to represent the family name with dignity. Each achievement was wielded against my choices, my lifestyle, my apparent failure to understand what the Morrison name demanded. Emma understands sacrifice, my father continued, his voice growing harder. She's traveled to dangerous places, worked impossible hours, all to build something larger than herself. While you play in the dirt, she's securing our family's future. Something in his tone caught my attention. The way he said dangerous places carried a weight I couldn't identify. But before I could process it further, my mother delivered her ultimatum. We've supported your archaeology phase long enough, she said, her words measured and final. It's time to grow up, join the family business, or find another family to disappoint. The silence that followed was deafening. The chandelier's crystals caught the candlelight, throwing rainbow fragments across the white tablecloth. I stared at my parents, searching their faces for any sign of the people who used to read me bedtime stories and attend my school plays. But those people seemed to have disappeared, replaced by strangers who saw me as a business liability. You're serious, I said quietly. Completely. My mother's voice was steady, rehearsed. You have until the end of the month to decide. Join Morrison Holdings in a meaningful capacity, or you're no longer our daughter. The weight of the ultimatum settled over me like a burial shroud. 3 years of disappointing them had led to this moment, the formal severing of ties unless I abandoned everything I'd worked for. I thought about the dig site in New Mexico, the team counting on my expertise, the discovery that could change everything we knew about ancient civilizations. Then I thought about walking away from my family forever. And if I choose archaeology? My father didn't hesitate. Then you pack your things and leave tonight. The trust fund stops, the credit cards are canceled, and we tell people you're studying abroad indefinitely. The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. They'd already planned my erasure, mapped out how to explain my absence to their social circle. I was a problem to be solved, not a daughter to be understood. I was about to respond when we heard it. The sound of car doors slamming in the driveway, followed by heavy footsteps on the front steps. My parents exchanged glances, confusion flickering across their faces. We weren't expecting anyone, and the staff never used the front entrance. The footsteps grew closer, echoing through the marble foyer with a rhythm that seemed almost military in its precision. Then came the sound of voices. Deep, authoritative, speaking in clipped tones I couldn't quite make out. Maria's voice carried from the hallway, nervous and apologetic. I'm sorry, but the family is at dinner. It's all right, Maria, they're expecting me. The voice that cut through the conversation sent ice through my veins. It was Emma's voice, but different somehow, harder, more commanding than I'd ever heard it. The footsteps resumed, growing louder as they approached the dining room. My parents rose from their chairs, my mother's face pale with confusion. Emma? But she's supposed to be in Frankfurt until... The oak doors to the dining room swung open, and my world tilted off its axis. The woman who walked through those doors looked exactly like my twin sister Emma, but everything else about her was wrong. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a severe military bun, not the soft waves she usually wore to complement her designer outfits. Her posture was ramrod straight, shoulders squared with an authority I'd never seen her possess. But it was the uniform that made my blood freeze. She wore deep navy blue with silver accents, cut in a style I'd never seen before. The fabric looked expensive, almost ceremonial, with intricate braiding across the chest and sleeves. On her collar were insignia I couldn't identify, geometric patterns that seemed to shift in the candlelight, and on her shoulders, impossible as it seemed, were 4 silver stars arranged in a diamond pattern. 4 stars. In any military I knew of, that would make her a full general. Emma was 25 years old. "Good evening, family," she said, her voice carrying that same strange authority. She moved with calculated precision, each step deliberate and measured. Two men in similar uniforms flanked her, their faces impassive, their hands resting near weapons I couldn't quite see. My parents stood frozen, their earlier confidence evaporating like morning mist. My mother's carefully composed mask slipped completely, revealing raw confusion and something that looked like fear. "Emma?" My father managed, his voice cracking on her name. What is this?" Emma's smile was cold, nothing like the warm expression I'd grown up seeing across the breakfast table. "Please, sit down, all of you." It wasn't a request. The men beside her took positions near the doorway while Emma moved to her usual chair. She sat with military precision, her back straight, hands folded on the table. The transformation was so complete that for a moment I wondered if this was actually my sister or some stranger wearing her face. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. "I apologize for the dramatic entrance," Emma said, though her tone suggested she wasn't sorry at all. "But given the conversation you were having with Rachel, I felt it was time to clarify a few things about our family's true business." My mother found her voice first. "Emma, darling, what are you wearing? Is this some kind of costume party? Did Bradley put you up to this?" Emma's laugh was sharp and humorless. "Bradley Whitman doesn't exist, Mother. At least, not the version you know. He's Lieutenant Colonel Bradford Williams, my liaison officer." The blood drained from my father's face. He sank back into his chair as if his legs could no longer support him. "Emma, what have you done?" "What I was recruited to do when I was 18, Emma replied matter-of-factly. "What you've been unknowingly supporting for the past 7 years. Morrison Holdings isn't just an investment firm, Father. It's a front for something much larger." My mind reeled as pieces of a puzzle I didn't know existed began falling into place. Emma's mysterious business trips, her ability to speak languages she'd never formally studied, her access to information that seemed impossible for someone her age to possess, the expensive gifts she brought back from travels, the way she sometimes slipped into accents I couldn't place. "You're scaring us, sweetheart," my mother whispered, her voice trembling. "This isn't you." "This is exactly me," Emma said, her gaze steady and unforgiving. "The question is whether you're ready to learn who your family really is." She gestured to one of her companions, who produced a leather portfolio from his jacket. Emma opened it and spread several photographs across the dinner table, pushing aside our untouched dessert plates. The images showed facilities I didn't recognize, sprawling complexes with no identifying markers, underground installations that looked like something from a science fiction film. "Morrison Holdings has been a covert operation for 37 years, Emma continued, her voice taking on the cadence of a military briefing. "Grandfather didn't build his fortune through savvy investments. He built it by providing financial services to organizations that officially don't exist." My father's hands shook as he reached for one of the photographs. "That's impossible. I've run this company for 20 years. I know every client, every transaction." "You know what you were allowed to know," Emma interrupted. "The legitimate business generates enough profit to satisfy auditors and maintain our social standing. But the real money, the real power, comes from our contracts with defense initiatives that operate beyond congressional oversight." The room felt like it was spinning. Everything I thought I knew about my family, about my life, was crumbling around me. My parents' wealth, our social status, the Morrison name itself, all of it built on foundations I couldn't begin to comprehend. "And you?" I found my voice, though it sounded foreign to my own ears. "What's your role in all this?" Emma turned her attention to me, and for a moment I saw something that might have been regret flicker across her features. "I'm what they call a strategic asset. Recruited young, trained extensively, embedded deep. My job is to identify and evaluate potential threats to our operations." "Threats like what?" "Like archaeologists who dig too deep in the wrong places," she said quietly. "Like my twin sister who just discovered something in New Mexico that she shouldn't have." Ice filled my veins. The pottery fragments I'd found, the unusual mineral composition that had excited my entire team. How could Emma possibly know about that? "You've been watching me," I said, the words feeling like broken glass in my throat. "I've been protecting you," Emma corrected. "Do you think it was a coincidence that your dig site was approved so quickly? That your funding came through when every other graduate student was struggling? That your professor suddenly decided to let an inexperienced archaeologist lead such an important excavation?" The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. Everything I'd accomplished, every moment of pride I'd felt in my work, had been orchestrated. I was a puppet dancing on strings I couldn't even see. "The artifacts you found last week," Emma continued relentlessly, "they're not pre-Columbian, they're modern, placed there specifically for you to discover. We needed to see how you'd react, what conclusions you'd draw, whether you'd pose a long-term security risk." My parents sat in stunned silence, their faces white with shock. The elegant dining room, with its crystal and silver and oil paintings, suddenly felt like a stage set. Beautiful but hollow, hiding something rotten beneath its polished surface. "Why?" I whispered. "Why do this to me?" "Because 3 months ago, you applied for a research position with the Smithsonian," Emma said. "Their background check triggered certain protocols. Your academic interests, combined with your family connections, made you a person of interest to people I answer to." She pulled another photograph from the portfolio, this one showing me at the dig site, unaware I was being watched. Seeing myself through their surveillance felt like a violation so profound I could barely breathe. "The good news," Emma continued, "is that you passed the test. Your reactions, your methodology, your discretion, everything indicates you're not a threat to ongoing operations, which brings us to why I'm here tonight." My father finally found his voice. "Emma, please, whatever this is, whatever you've gotten involved in, we can fix it." "We can." "You can't fix anything, Father," Emma said, her voice gentle but firm, "because you were never really in control. The board members you report to, the investors who fund your deals, the government officials who smooth your regulatory problems, they all work for the same organization I do." She stood up, her movements still carrying that unnerving military precision. "Which brings me to the real purpose of tonight's dinner. Rachel, you have a choice to make. Not the one our parents offered you. That was theater, designed to create the emotional stress necessary for proper evaluation." My hands trembled as I gripped the edge of the table. "What kind of choice?" "Join us willingly and help us protect archaeological sites that contain sensitive information. Use your expertise to ensure certain discoveries never see the light of day. In return, you'll have unlimited funding, access to sites around the world, and the satisfaction of serving something larger than academic curiosity." She moved closer, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than her earlier commands. "Or refuse and disappear, not metaphorically, like our parents threatened. Literally. Your dig site will suffer an unfortunate accident, your research will be confiscated, and Rachel Morrison will simply cease to exist." The chandelier above us swayed slightly in the air conditioning, casting shifting shadows across Emma's face. At that moment, I realized I was looking at a stranger wearing my sister's skin, offering me a choice between servitude and death. And the most terrifying part was that I could see, in her eyes, she would carry out either option without hesitation. The silence stretched between us like a chasm that could never be bridged. I stared at Emma, or the woman who looked like Emma, trying to find any trace of the sister who used to sneak into my room during thunderstorms, who shared secrets and inside jokes, who cried with me when our childhood dog died. But those memories felt like they belonged to someone else's life. "How long have you known?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "About me, about what I was doing?" Emma's expression softened fractionally, the first crack in her military facade. "Since you were 16 and wrote that essay about lost civilizations for AP history. Your teacher forwarded it to a university contact, who forwarded it to someone else. By the time you declared archaeology as your major, we'd already built your entire academic path." The revelation hit me like ice water. 8 years of my life, carefully orchestrated. Every mentor who'd believed in me. every opportunity that had seemed like fate, every moment I'd felt proud of my independence, all of it manipulation. Professor Martinez, I asked, thinking of the man who'd become like a father to me, who'd encouraged my passion for pre-Columbian cultures. He's genuine, Emma said, and I felt a small surge of relief. But his department's funding comes through channels we control. He doesn't know it, but he's been working for us indirectly for 15 years. My mother made a small, broken sound. She'd been sitting in stunned silence, her perfect composure completely shattered. Emma, sweetheart, I don't understand any of this. Your engagement party is next month. Bradley's parents will be informed that the engagement is off due to irreconcilable differences. Emma cut her off. Bradford, his real name, will be reassigned to European operations. The Whitman family was a constructed identity designed to give me social legitimacy while I completed my evaluation of Rachel. My father leaned forward, his face gray with shock. What about Morrison Holdings, the business I've spent my life building? Will continue exactly as it has, Emma replied. You've been an exemplary front father. Your genuine ignorance of our true operations has made you invaluable. Auditors, investigators, business competitors, they all see exactly what they expect to see. A successful investment firm run by a competent but unremarkable businessman. The casual cruelty of her words made my father flinch as if he'd been slapped. I watched my parents, these powerful, confident people who'd controlled every aspect of my life, reduced to frightened children learning that the adults had been lying all along. And if I refuse your offer, I asked Emma, what happens to them? For the first time, something like genuine emotion crossed her features. They continue living their lives, believing tonight was an elaborate psychological breakdown. We have drugs that can selectively edit memories, create false recollections. They'll remember a family dinner, where we argued about your future, where I supported your right to choose archaeology, where we all reconciled by the end of the evening. And me? You'll have an accident at the dig site. Unstable ground, equipment failure. These things happen in remote locations. Your body will be found, your death will be mourned, and your research will disappear into our archives. The matter-of-fact way she described my murder sent chills down my spine. This wasn't my sister anymore. This was a weapon in human form, programmed to eliminate obstacles. But then I noticed something, the way her left hand trembled slightly when she spoke about my death, how she avoided making direct eye contact when she mentioned the accident. Emma might have been transformed into something else, but some part of her was fighting against what she'd become. There's a third option, I said suddenly, the words coming from some desperate part of my mind that refused to accept defeat. Emma's eyes sharpened. There are only two options. What if I join you, but not the way you're describing? What if I become like you? One of her companions shifted position, his hand moving closer to his weapon. Emma held up a hand to stop him, her gaze fixed on me with laser intensity. Explain. You said I passed your test, that I'm not a threat, but you also said I have skills you need, access to archaeological sites, academic credentials that would be useful. What if instead of just helping you bury discoveries, I became a full operative? Like you. Emma was quiet for a long moment, and I could see her mind working behind her eyes. The transformation isn't reversible, Rachel. Once you cross that line, there's no going back to who you were. Who I was is gone anyway, I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. You've made sure of that. Everything I thought I knew about my life, my family, my accomplishments, it was all illusion. So maybe it's time to see what's real. My parents looked between us with growing horror, finally understanding that their daughters were negotiating something far beyond their comprehension. My mother reached for my hand across the table. Rachel, baby, please, whatever this is, we can work it out. We can go to the authorities. There are no authorities above us, Margaret, Emma said, using my mother's first name like a stranger would. The people we work for have influence that spans decades, across party lines, beyond national boundaries. The archaeological discoveries Rachel would help suppress, the sites she'd help protect. They contain evidence of technologies, of contact, of things that would fundamentally alter human understanding of our own history. What kind of things? I asked, my scientific curiosity overriding my fear. Emma glanced at her companions, some silent communication passing between them. After a moment, she nodded to herself as if reaching a decision. 3 years ago, a team in Antarctica discovered structures beneath the ice that predate human civilization by millions of years. Last year, cave paintings in France revealed mathematical formulas that wouldn't be developed by human scientists for another century. 6 months ago, hieroglyphs in Egypt contained star charts showing celestial bodies we haven't yet discovered. The room spun around me. Everything I'd studied about human history, about the development of civilization, about our place in the universe, all of it was incomplete. We weren't alone, and we never had been. The pottery fragments you found in New Mexico, Emma continued. They contain metal alloys that don't exist in our periodic table. The geometric patterns carved into them match symbols found at 17 other sites across 6 continents, all supposedly from different time periods and cultures that never had contact. I thought about the fragments, about the strange way they seemed to shimmer in certain light, about the mineral tests that had come back inconclusive. My team had attributed the anomalies to contamination or equipment error. We'd been so naive. "Who's been visiting Earth?" I whispered. "That's classified above your current level," Emma said. "But if you join us willingly, completely, you'll learn things that will make your archaeological work seem like children's games. You'll be part of the most important mission in human history, protecting our species from knowledge we're not ready to handle." The weight of the decision pressed down on me like a physical force. Join this shadow organization and help suppress the greatest discoveries in human history. Refuse and die, leaving my parents to live with edited memories of a daughter who'd been killed in an accident. Or choose the third path I'd suggested. Become something else entirely. Transform myself as completely as Emma had been transformed, and gain access to truths that would revolutionize everything we thought we knew about existence itself. "If I agree to full operative status," I said slowly, "what happens to Rachel Morrison?" Emma's smile was cold as winter. "Rachel Morrison dies tonight. But someone much more interesting takes her place." Outside, storm clouds were gathering, and I could hear the first rumbles of thunder rolling across the Westchester Hills. The chandelier above us swayed slightly, casting moving shadows that made the oil paintings on the wall seem to shift and watch. I looked at my parents one last time. My father still processing the collapse of everything he'd believed about his business, my mother clutching her pearls like a lifeline. They'd raised 2 daughters and somehow produced one woman who'd become a weapon, and another who was about to make the same choice. "What's the process?" I asked Emma. "How do I become like you?" The storm outside grew stronger, rain beginning to lash against the windows, and I realized it wasn't just weather. It was the sound of my old life washing away forever. Emma studied me for what felt like hours but was probably only seconds. Behind her composed expression, I could see calculations happening. Risk assessments, probability matrices, evaluations I couldn't begin to understand. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a weight I'd never heard before. "The process takes 18 months, she said. Full psychological reconditioning, advanced combat training, technological integration, and something we call cognitive expansion. By the end, you'll be able to process information at rates that would overwhelm a normal human mind. You'll see patterns in chaos, predict behavioral outcomes with startling accuracy, and access databases that exist in quantum states." "Quantum states?" I repeated, my scientific background struggling to process the implications. One of Emma's companions stepped forward, a man with silver hair and eyes like winter storms. When he spoke, his voice carried traces of an accent I couldn't place. "Information storage beyond traditional physics, Dr. Morrison. Data encoded in probability fields, accessible only to minds that have been properly prepared." The formal title caught me off guard. I'd never been called Dr. Morrison before. I was still working on my doctorate. But apparently, in their world, I'd already achieved that status. "The integration isn't just mental," Emma continued. "We'll enhance your physical capabilities, your sensory processing, your resistance to environmental extremes. You'll be able to work in conditions that would kill ordinary humans. Deep ocean trenches, high-altitude sites, locations with radiation levels that would be lethal." My mother made a small sound of distress. You're talking about changing her into something that isn't human. We're talking about evolution, the silver-haired man replied. Natural selection is accelerated by conscious choice. Dr. Morrison's archaeological background makes her uniquely valuable. She already knows how to read landscapes, to understand the stories that civilizations leave behind. With our enhancements, she'll be able to see things that have been hidden for millennia. I thought about the dig sites I'd worked, the hours spent carefully brushing dust from pottery shards and analyzing soil composition. But what if I could see electromagnetic patterns invisible to normal eyes? What if I could detect mineral compositions by touch, or read the quantum signatures that Emma was describing? Show me, I said suddenly. Show me what you can do that I can't. Emma exchanged glances with her companions. After a moment of silent communication, she walked to the oil painting hanging behind my father's chair, a portrait of my great-grandfather that had hung there since before I was born. She pressed her hand against the frame, and I heard a soft clicking sound. The painting swung inward like a door, revealing a hidden room I'd never suspected existed. Motion sensors in the frame, Emma explained, noticing my amazement, triggered by specific biometric signatures. This house has been equipped with technology you can't imagine. She gestured for me to follow her into the hidden space. My parents remained seated, looking too shocked to move, while the two men in uniform took positions flanking the secret entrance. The room beyond was nothing like the traditional decor of the main house. Banks of monitors lined the walls, displaying feeds from cameras I couldn't identify. Maps covered with strange symbols hung between the screens, showing locations across the globe marked with color-coded pins. In the center of the room stood a table that looked like it belonged on a spaceship. Smooth surfaces that seemed to glow from within, holographic displays hovering above its surface. "Welcome to the real Morrison family business," Emma said, her voice echoing slightly in the space. "This is where the actual decisions are made." She touched the table's surface, and a three-dimensional map materialized in the air above it. I recognized some of the continents, but the details were wrong. Coastlines that didn't match modern geography, land masses that shouldn't exist. "This is Earth as it was 12,000 years ago," Emma explained. "Before the last ice age ended. Before the great civilizations fell. Before humanity forgot its true history." Points of light appeared across the ancient map, dozens of them, scattered across every continent. Each one pulsed with a different color, and as I watched, lines of connection appeared between them, creating a web of relationships that spanned the globe. "These are the sites we monitor," Emma continued, "places where evidence remains of what came before. Your dig site in New Mexico is one of them, a communication hub that was part of a global network." The implications hit me like a tidal wave. Everything I'd studied about human development, about the rise of civilization, about our technological progress, it was all built on incomplete information. We weren't the first intelligent species to inhabit Earth, and we certainly weren't the most advanced. "The pottery fragments I found," I said, my voice barely audible. "They're not human artifacts at all, are they?" "Human-made," Emma corrected, "but following instructions and using materials provided by others. 12,000 years ago, our ancestors were taught to create beacon networks, communication systems, storage devices for information they couldn't understand but faithfully preserved." She touched another section of the table, and the display changed. Now I was looking at detailed scans of the pottery fragments from my dig site, but with layers of information I'd never seen. Quantum signatures, electromagnetic frequencies, data streams that seemed to flow like living things. "With proper enhancement, you'll be able to read these patterns directly," Emma said. "No more guessing at radiocarbon dates or analyzing mineral compositions in laboratories. You'll see the information flow, understand the purposes these artifacts served, and comprehend the messages they were designed to preserve." "What kind of messages?" Emma's expression grew grave. "Warnings, mostly. Records of what happened to the civilizations that came before. Instructions for preventing the same mistakes. Protocols for when contact is reestablished." "Contact with who?" "That's level 7 clearance," the silver-haired man said from the doorway. Dr. Morrison would need to complete initial enhancement before accessing that information. I walked closer to the holographic display, watching data streams flow like rivers of light. My scientific mind was reeling with possibilities, with questions that had never occurred to me before. But underneath the excitement, a darker realization was taking hold. You're not just suppressing archaeological discoveries, I said slowly. You're preventing humanity from learning about its own past. We're protecting humanity from knowledge it isn't ready to handle, Emma replied. The last time our species had access to this level of technology, we nearly destroyed the planet. The ice age that ended 12,000 years ago wasn't natural. It was the result of a conflict that brought down civilizations that spanned continents. The weight of that revelation settled over me like physical pressure. We weren't just talking about ancient pottery or mysterious cave paintings. We were talking about the rise and fall of entire species, about technologies that could reshape reality itself, about responsibilities that stretched across millennia. And if I refuse enhancement? I asked. If I walk away from all of this? Emma's reflection appeared in the holographic display, her face superimposed over the ancient map like a ghost from the future. Then tomorrow morning, your dig site will experience an earthquake. Natural gas pockets will ignite. The entire area will be declared unstable and permanently closed to archaeological investigation. Your research will be classified due to proximity to military testing zones. And Dr. Rachel Morrison will die in a tragic accident during the evacuation. The casual precision with which she outlined my destruction was more terrifying than any threat could have been. This wasn't malice. It was simply the most efficient solution to a problem I represented. But if I accept, then tonight, Rachel Morrison disappears. Your parents will remember a daughter who decided to join Doctors Without Borders, working in remote locations with limited communication. Your colleagues will receive notice that you've accepted a position with a private research foundation. And 18 months from now, someone new will emerge. Someone with your memories, your knowledge, your basic personality, but enhanced beyond anything you can currently imagine. I stared at the flowing data streams, at the evidence of civilizations that had risen and fallen while humanity was still learning to make fire. The choice before me was impossible. Remain human and die, or become something else and help suppress the greatest discoveries in history. But as I watched the patterns flow across the holographic display, I began to see something Emma hadn't mentioned. Hidden in the data streams were gaps, inconsistencies, places where information had been deliberately obscured. Someone else was playing a deeper game, and even Emma might not know all the rules. There's something you're not telling me, I said, pointing to the gaps in the data streams. These aren't random omissions. Someone edited this information deliberately. Emma's composure flickered for just a moment, a micro-expression that might have been surprising or possibly fearful. The silver-haired man moved closer to the table, his eyes fixed on the areas I'd identified. Dr. Morrison has excellent pattern recognition, he said, but his tone carried a note of concern. Perhaps too excellent for a preliminary viewing. Answer my question, Emma, I pressed. Who else has access to this system? Who's been modifying the data? The silence that followed was deafening. Emma stared at the holographic display, her enhanced mind clearly processing calculations I couldn't follow. When she finally spoke, her voice was quieter than before. There are factions within the organization, she admitted. Not everyone agrees on how much information should be preserved, or when humanity might be ready for full disclosure. Factions? I repeated. You mean some people want to reveal everything? Some want to accelerate the timeline, the silver-haired man corrected. They believe keeping humanity in ignorance serves no purpose, except to maintain power structures that benefit the current leadership. Quote, Emma shot him a warning look, but he continued anyway. Others think we should make contact with the original architects, regardless of the consequences. They've been modifying certain archaeological sites to leave more obvious evidence. The implications hit me like lightning. The anomalies in my dig site, the too-perfect preservation, the convenient placement of artifacts. Someone wanted me to find them. The pottery fragments were planted specifically for you, yes, Emma confirmed, but not by our organization. By people who want to force disclosure through academic channels. I felt the ground shifting beneath my feet again. So there are at least 3 sides to this. Your organization wants to suppress everything. Another group wants to reveal everything. And a third group is trying to manipulate archaeologists like me into making discoveries that would force the issue. It's more complicated than that, Emma said. The group manipulating archaeological sites isn't entirely human. The words hung in the air like a physical presence. I stared at my twin sister, this woman who looked exactly like me but had been transformed into something I was only beginning to understand. What do you mean, not entirely human? Emma touched the table surface again, and the display changed. Now I was looking at surveillance footage from my dig site, but with enhanced imaging that revealed details invisible to normal cameras. Moving among my team were figures that looked human at first glance, but something was wrong with their movements, their posture, the way they interacted with the equipment. Enhanced individuals from earlier recruitment cycles, Emma explained, people who've been through the transformation process, but with different modifications than mine. They're designed to blend in with academic environments, to guide research in specific directions. Professor Martinez? I asked, my heart sinking. No, he's genuinely human, but 2 of his graduate assistants aren't. Neither is the equipment technician who's been working at your site for the past month. I watched the footage, seeing my colleagues with new eyes. The way Sarah Chen moved with too much precision. How Marcus Webb seemed to anticipate equipment failures before they happened. The strange efficiency with which they process soil samples. They've been manipulating my research from the beginning, I whispered. From the beginning, Emma confirmed. The question is why. What do they gain from having you discover evidence of pre-human civilizations? The silver-haired man activated another section of the table, and a new display appeared. A complex web of connections showing the flow of information between various archaeological sites, universities, government agencies, and organizations I'd never heard of. Academic disclosure has certain advantages over official revelation, he explained. If evidence emerges through scholarly research, it carries credibility that government announcements lack. People trust scientists more than politicians. But it also creates chaos, Emma added. Uncontrolled revelation leads to panic, religious upheaval, and economic collapse. The last time humanity learned too much too quickly, entire civilizations fell. I studied the information web, following connections that stretched across continents and decades. How long has this been going on? The manipulation, the competing factions, the hidden enhancements? Since 1947, the silver-haired man said. What your history books call the Roswell incident was actually first contact with representatives of the original architects. They returned to check on humanity's progress and found us on the verge of nuclear self-destruction. So they intervened? They offered guidance, Emma corrected. Conditional assistance in exchange for careful management of technological development. Some humans agreed to serve as intermediaries. Others wanted to reject the offer entirely. And still, others wanted to seize their technology by force. The scope of it was overwhelming. 78 years of secret history, of hidden conflicts, of human evolution guided by forces I was only beginning to comprehend. And somehow I'd stumbled into the middle of it by choosing to study pottery fragments in the New Mexico desert. Where do you fit in all this? I asked Emma. Which faction do you really serve? For the first time since walking through the dining room doors, Emma looked uncertain. I serve the mission I was given, to evaluate and manage potential security threats, but lately I've been questioning whether that mission serves humanity's best interests. Meaning? Meaning the people who enhanced me, who gave me these abilities, who taught me to see the world through quantum data streams. They're not entirely human either. The revelation sent ice through my veins. What are you saying? Quote, Emma moved to another section of the room, where monitors displayed biological data I couldn't interpret. The enhancement process doesn't just improve human capabilities. It integrates us with technology that originates from the same source as those ancient artifacts. We become hybrids, part human and part something else. Something else like what? Like the original architects, the silver-haired man said quietly. The species that guided early human development, that taught our ancestors to build those communication networks, that left instructions encoded in quantum fields. I stared at Emma, really looking at her for the first time since she'd walked through those doors. The perfect posture, the enhanced cognitive abilities, the way she seemed to process information faster than any human should be able to. She wasn't just my sister with military training. She was something fundamentally different. "Are you still human?" I whispered. Emma's smile was sad and distant. "I remember being human. I remember what it felt like to be your sister, to share jokes and secrets and dreams about the future. But those memories feel like they belong to someone else now." "Then why offer me the same transformation? Why risk turning me into what you've become?" "Because the alternative is worse," she said simply. "The faction that's been manipulating your research, they're planning something called the Revelation Protocol. Mass disclosure of everything, all at once, through coordinated archaeological discoveries worldwide. And that's bad because humanity isn't ready," the silver-haired man interjected. "The last civilization that received full disclosure tried to use the architect's technology to become gods themselves. The resulting conflict nearly sterilized the planet." Emma activated a final display, historical records that showed the true scope of the ancient catastrophe. Cities that spanned continents, technology that could reshape matter at the molecular level, conflicts that tore holes in reality itself. And then, suddenly, ice ages and extinction events that wiped the slate clean. "The choice isn't between freedom and oppression," Emma said softly. "It's between gradual evolution and catastrophic revelation. Between humanity learning to handle advanced knowledge responsibly or repeating the mistakes that destroyed our predecessors." Quote, "I looked around the hidden room, at the technology that defied everything I thought I knew about physics, at the evidence of civilizations that had risen and fallen while humans were still discovering fire. The weight of cosmic responsibility settled on my shoulders like a burial shroud. If I accept enhancement," I said slowly, "do I get to help make these decisions? Or do I just become another tool for people who may not be human themselves?" Emma's reflection appeared again in the holographic displays, superimposed over images of ancient ruins and impossible technologies. "That depends on choices you'll make after the transformation is complete. Choices I can't predict, because by then, you'll be thinking with capabilities I can't imagine." Outside the hidden room, thunder continued to roll across the Westchester Hills, and I realized the storm was more than weather. It was the sound of everything I'd ever believed about reality crumbling away, leaving me standing on the edge of an abyss that might lead to transcendence or destruction. And the most terrifying part was that I was beginning to want to jump. "I need to see them," I said suddenly, the words surprising even me. "The original architects. Before I make any decision, I need to understand what I'm really choosing between." The silver-haired man stepped back from the table as if I'd suggested something blasphemous. "That's impossible. Direct contact requires authorization levels that take years to achieve, assuming you survive the enhancement process." But Emma was studying me with a new intensity, her enhanced mind clearly processing possibilities. "There might be another way," she said slowly. "The quantum data streams I showed you, they contain more than just information. They carry imprints, resonance patterns from the minds that created them." "Meaning?" "Meaning someone with the right neurological preparation could experience brief contact through the data itself. Not true communication, but impressions. Emotional resonance. Glimpses of how they think, what they value, why they intervene in human development." The silver-haired man looked alarmed. "Emma, that procedure hasn't been tested on unenhanced subjects. The neurological stress could cause permanent damage." "Or it could give Rachel the information she needs to make an informed choice," Emma countered. "Isn't that what we want? Consent based on understanding rather than fear?" Quote, I could feel the tension between them, undercurrents of disagreement about protocols and procedures. But underneath their debate, I sensed something else. Emma was testing boundaries, perhaps even rebelling against the very organization that had created her. "What would I experience?" I asked. Emma moved to a different section of the table, activating displays that showed complex neural mapping patterns, brief contact with consciousness patterns unlike anything human. You'd see fragments of their memories, their motivations, their understanding of cosmic cycles that span millions of years. And the risks? Psychological trauma, permanent neurological changes, possible catatonia, the silver-haired man listed grimly. Or you could emerge with expanded awareness that makes the enhancement process unnecessary. Because I'd already been partially transformed? Because you'd understand the true scope of what we're dealing with, Emma said. The architects don't think the way we do. They perceive time differently, process information through quantum consciousness, experience reality as interconnected probability fields. Brief contact with that level of awareness changes you permanently. I thought about everything I'd learned in the past few hours. The secret organizations, the hidden history, the evidence of civilizations that predated human development by millions of years. Traditional academic research felt suddenly primitive, like trying to understand the ocean by examining a single drop of water. How would it work? Emma gestured to a chair I hadn't noticed before, positioned near the table's edge with cables and sensors that looked disturbingly medical. Neural interface, direct connection to the quantum data streams. We'd guide you through specific memory imprints, starting with the most benign and gradually increasing complexity. Define benign. Emotional impressions from the architect who supervised early human development. Paternal feelings, protective instincts, concern for a species showing promise but prone to self-destruction. The silver-haired man was shaking his head. This violates every protocol we have. Unauthorized contact with architect consciousness could trigger defensive responses we're not prepared to handle. What kind of defensive responses? I asked. Emma's expression grew troubled. The architects don't experience individual consciousness the way we do. They exist as collective entities, shared awareness across multiple forms. If one of them perceives a threat, they all respond simultaneously. And they might see unenhanced human contact as a threat? They might see it as contamination, the silver-haired man said bluntly. Previous unauthorized contacts have resulted in complete neural burnout. Subjects left in vegetative states, or worse, humans whose consciousness became permanently merged with architect awareness. The room fell silent except for the humming of the advanced technology around us. Through the walls, I could hear my parents moving around in the dining room, probably trying to process everything they'd witnessed. Their comfortable world of investment portfolios and charity galas had been shattered just as completely as mine. There's something else, Emma said quietly. Something I haven't told you about the Revelation Protocol. She activated a new display showing a timeline that stretched into the near future, dates marked with coordinates I didn't recognize, events scheduled with military precision. The faction planning mass disclosure isn't just manipulating archaeological sites. They're preparing to make direct contact with the architects themselves, without authorization from any human organization. When? 6 weeks from now. During the winter solstice, when certain quantum fields align in ways that make long-distance communication easier. The implications sent chills down my spine. And if they succeed? Best-case scenario. The architects respond peacefully and begin gradual integration with human civilization under guidance from the rebel faction. Worst case. They perceive unauthorized contact as an act of aggression and respond accordingly. What would that response look like? Emma's face was grim. The same thing that ended the last advanced civilization. Targeted climate manipulation, tectonic instability, atmospheric changes that would reduce human population to sustainable levels while preserving the planet for future development. I stared at the timeline, at the dates marked in red that represented potential extinction events. So the choice isn't just about my personal transformation. It's about preventing human extinction. Or ensuring that whatever survives the coming changes is worth preserving, the silver-haired man said. Enhanced humans might survive climate catastrophes that would kill baseline populations. We might be humanity's insurance policy. Quote, the casual way he discussed genocide made my stomach turn. These people, these enhanced beings who had once been human, were planning for the death of billions as if it were a necessary business decision. Unless, Emma said, her voice carrying new urgency, we can find a third option, something between suppression and revelation, between extinction and transformation. Like what? Like someone making authorized contact with the architects. Someone with both human perspective and enhanced capabilities, who could negotiate a middle path. I realized where she was leading. Someone like you. Someone like what you could become, she corrected. I'm too deeply integrated with our organization's protocols. My consciousness has been shaped by their priorities, their fears, their control systems. But you, if you underwent enhancement by choice, maintaining your core motivations and ethical framework, you might be able to communicate with the architects as an equal. The weight of cosmic responsibility settled on me like a physical presence. Not just my own survival, but potentially the future of human civilization, balanced on decisions I would make in the next few hours. The neural interface, I said, pointing to the chair with its web of cables and sensors. If I survive contact with architect consciousness, what then? Then you'd have information no other human possesses, Emma said. Understanding of their true intentions, their assessment of human potential, their conditions for peaceful coexistence. And if I don't survive? Then at least you'd die knowing the truth, the silver-haired man said grimly, which is more than most humans ever get. I moved closer to the chair, studying the technology that could either expand my consciousness beyond anything I could imagine, or leave me a vegetable in a hospital bed. The quantum data streams continued to flow across the holographic displays, carrying information from minds that had witnessed the rise and fall of entire species. There's one more thing you should know, Emma said, her voice softer than it had been all evening. The architect who supervised early human development, the one whose memories you'd contact first, has been trying to re-establish communication for decades. Why? Because they're dying, she said simply. The collective consciousness that has guided species development across the galaxy for millions of years is fragmenting. They need to pass on their knowledge, their responsibilities, their cosmic perspective to successors who can continue the work. Successors like enhanced humans? Successors like what humanity could become, given proper guidance and sufficient time. I looked around the hidden room one last time, at the impossible technology, at the evidence of civilizations that had risen and fallen while humans learned to make fire, at my sister who had been transformed into something beyond my understanding. Then I looked at the chair that could either kill me or make me into something capable of preventing human extinction. The storm outside was reaching its peak, rain lashing against windows, thunder shaking the foundations of the house. And somewhere in that chaos, I could almost hear something else, a signal hidden in the static. A voice calling across cosmic distances, desperate to be heard before time ran out. I sat down in the chair and reached for the neural interface cables. The neural interface felt cold against my temples, like ice forming in my skull. Emma's hands moved across the table's surface with practiced efficiency, configuring parameters I couldn't understand while the silver-haired man monitored readings that spiked and fluctuated on nearby screens. Initial connection established, Emma announced, her voice seeming to come from very far away. Neural pathways respond normally, beginning quantum resonance alignment. The world around me began to dissolve. At first, it was like sinking into warm water, a gradual disconnection from physical sensation that felt almost peaceful. But then the water became light, and the light became something that had no name in any human language. I was floating in a space between spaces, where thoughts had color, and emotions cast shadows that stretched across dimensions. And then I felt it, a presence vast beyond comprehension, ancient beyond measure, gentle beyond human understanding. Small one. The communication wasn't words or images, but direct transfer of meaning. You reach across the void with courage that honors your species. I tried to respond, to form thoughts into something resembling communication, but my consciousness felt like a candle flame, trying to illuminate an ocean. The architect's awareness surrounded me completely, and within it I saw fragments of memory that spanned geological epochs. I witnessed the first time they'd encountered humans, primitive beings huddled around fires, barely aware of the stars above them. I felt their curiosity, their protective instincts, their careful decision to offer guidance without interference. Like gardeners tending a promising seedling, they'd watched humanity grow with patience measured in millennia. We have walked among many species, the architect continued, sharing images of civilizations that had risen across the galaxy, some successful in their evolution, others falling to the same mistakes humanity now approached. Most choose destruction when they discover they are not alone. Your kind shows unusual promise. Promise for what? I managed to ask, my thoughts still struggling to maintain coherence in the face of such overwhelming consciousness. To become gardeners themselves. To guide others as we have guided you. The cosmos is vast, small, and filled with young species who need teaching. Through the connection, I saw the true scope of the architect's mission. They weren't conquerors or rulers, but shepherds of consciousness itself, traveling between stars to nurture intelligence wherever it emerged. For millions of years, they'd prevented promising species from destroying themselves, offering just enough guidance to help them mature. But now I felt their weariness, their exhaustion from eons of responsibility. The collective consciousness that had once spanned galaxies was fragmenting, individual components breaking away or simply fading into quantum static. They were dying, not as individuals, but as a unified entity capable of cosmic stewardship. We seek successors, the architect explained, and suddenly I understood why Emma and others had been enhanced, why humanity was being slowly prepared for revelation, species that can take responsibility for guidance without the temptation to dominate. What about the faction planning unauthorized contact? I asked. The architect's emotional response carried overtones of sadness and concern. They represent humanity's greatest weakness, the desire to seize power without understanding responsibility. Their approach would force us to respond defensively. Images flooded my consciousness. Previous species that had attempted to steal architect technology, worlds reduced to ash and ice when peaceful guidance was rejected in favor of conquest. The architects didn't want to destroy humanity, but they wouldn't allow another aggressive species to spread across the galaxy. You have been chosen to help prevent this outcome, the architect continued. Your mind shows the balance we seek, scientific curiosity tempered by ethical consideration, independence balanced with cooperation. Chosen how? I just stumbled into this by accident. No accidents exist at cosmic scales. Your archaeological interests, your family connections, your genetic compatibility with enhancement technology, all were influenced by probability adjustments we made decades ago. The revelation hit me like lightning. My entire life, every choice I'd made, every circumstance that had led me to this moment, all of it had been gently guided by manipulations so subtle I'd never detected them. I wasn't a random person caught up in cosmic events. I was a carefully cultivated solution to a problem that threatened both species. Free will remains yours, the architect assured me, sensing my distress. We create opportunities, not compulsions. Your choices have always been authentic, even when circumstances were arranged. Through the connection, I began to understand the true nature of the choice before me. Enhanced integration wouldn't just give me abilities like Emma's. It would make me a bridge between species, capable of communicating with both human consciousness and architect awareness. I would become a translator for concepts that had no equivalent in either language. The transformation can begin now, the architect offered. Integration of our technology with your consciousness. Expansion of awareness beyond current human limits. Preparation for responsibilities that span star systems. I felt the process beginning. Quantum patterns infiltrating my neural pathways, expanding my capacity for information processing, connecting me to data streams that existed in probability fields. It was overwhelming and terrifying and magnificent all at once. But then in the depths of the architect's vast consciousness, I sensed something else. Doubt. Uncertainty about whether humanity was truly ready for cosmic responsibility. Whether even enhanced humans could resist the temptations that had destroyed other species. You're not sure about us, are you? I asked. Certainty is impossible when dealing with evolutionary potential, the architect admitted. Your species shows remarkable adaptability, but also dangerous aggression. Enhanced humans could become wise shepherds or galactic tyrants. So what happens if you're wrong about us? The architect's response carried the weight of cosmic judgment. Then we ensure that human expansion beyond Earth becomes impossible. Your world would be preserved, but isolated, prevented from affecting other species until you mature sufficiently. A cosmic quarantine, if necessary. I understood now why the various factions existed, why some groups wanted to suppress all evidence while others pushed for revelation. Everyone was gambling with humanity's future based on incomplete understanding of stakes that stretched across galaxies. Through the neural interface, I could feel Emma monitoring my vital signs, her concern transmitted through quantum resonance. The silver-haired man was speaking urgently about neural stress levels and safe exposure limits. But their voices seemed increasingly distant as the architect's consciousness enveloped mine more completely. The choice approaches completion, the architect observed. Enhancement will make you capable of guiding both your species and ours through the transition ahead. But it will also separate you permanently from baseline humanity. What about the people I love, my parents, my friends, the colleagues I've worked with? You will remember loving them, but the emotion will feel distant, like recalling childhood experiences from an adult perspective. Enhanced consciousness processes relationships differently, broader, deeper, but less intensely personal. I thought about my parents sitting in the dining room, probably still trying to process the evening's revelations. I thought about my dig team in New Mexico, carefully brushing dust from pottery fragments that had been planted for me to find. I thought about the simple pleasure I'd felt when solving archaeological puzzles, the satisfaction of piecing together fragments of human history. All of that would change. I would become something that remembered being human but could never truly be human again. Time grows short, the architect warned. The unauthorized contact approaches, and our defensive protocols activate automatically if we perceive threats to cosmic stability. What if there was another way? I asked suddenly. What if enhanced humans served as intermediaries, but baseline humanity was given the choice to develop naturally? Explain. The idea crystallized as I spoke. Gradual revelation through enhanced humans who understand both perspectives. No suppression, no forced disclosure, but careful introduction of concepts humanity can handle at its own pace. Enhanced humans become guides, not rulers. The architect considered this, and I felt its vast consciousness processing probability matrices that stretched across centuries. Such an approach would require unprecedented cooperation between human factions, trust between enhanced and baseline populations, patience measured in generations. But it's possible? Possible, but not certain. Success would depend on individuals choosing responsibility over power, cooperation over domination. I felt the neural interface beginning to overload, my baseline human consciousness reaching its limits for processing architect awareness. But in those final moments of connection, I made my choice. I accept enhancement, I said, but not for power or knowledge. To become a bridge between worlds, a translator for concepts neither species can understand alone. The transformation began immediately. Quantum patterns integrating with my neural pathways, expanding my consciousness beyond human limits, connecting me to information streams that spanned galaxies. I felt myself changing on fundamental levels, becoming something new and strange and wonderful. But as my awareness expanded, I held onto one crucial anchor, the memory of what it felt like to be fully human, with all the limitations and vulnerabilities that entailed. That memory would be my guide, my reminder of what I was fighting to preserve. The storm outside reached its crescendo as my transformation completed. Through enhanced senses, I could perceive the quantum resonance patterns hidden in the thunder, the probability fields fluctuating with each lightning strike. The world looked the same but felt completely different, layered with information I'd never been able to process before. Emma and the silver-haired man were staring at me with expressions of amazement and concern. The neural interface had gone dark, its connections severed when my consciousness exceeded baseline human parameters. "How do you feel?" Emma asked. I stood up carefully, marveling at the precision of my movement, the enhanced awareness of every muscle and bone. Through quantum resonance, I could sense the architect's consciousness withdrawing to whatever cosmic distances it normally inhabited. But the connection remained, faint but permanent. "Different," I said, hearing my own voice change pitch slightly as my vocal cords adjusted to new neural pathways. "But still me, still Rachel." "The enhanced Rachel," the silver-haired man corrected, "with capabilities none of us fully understand." Through the walls, I could perceive my parents in the dining room, their elevated heart rates, their confusion and fear, their desperate need for reassurance that their world still made sense. Enhanced empathy allowed me to feel their emotions as if they were my own, while enhanced intellect showed me exactly how to help them process tonight's revelations. They'll need memory modification, I said, understanding the necessity even as it pained me. Not erasure, but careful editing. They should remember that Emma and I chose different paths, that we're both happy, that the family remains intact. Emma nodded, relief visible in her expression. I was hoping you'd reach that conclusion. Complete erasure would have been traumatic for them. I looked around the hidden room one last time, seeing it now through enhanced perception that revealed layers of technology I'd never suspected. Quantum processors hidden in the walls, probability field generators disguised as decorative elements, communication arrays that could reach across interstellar distances. What happens now? I asked. Now we prevent an extinction event, Emma said simply. The unauthorized contact is still scheduled for the winter solstice. We have 6 weeks to either stop it or ensure it happens under controlled conditions. And if we succeed, then humanity gets the chance to prove itself worthy of cosmic citizenship, the silver-haired man said. To become gardeners instead of conquerors, guides instead of destroyers. I nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settling onto shoulders that were now strong enough to bear it. Through quantum resonance, I could sense other enhanced humans around the world, some working to prevent revelation, others pushing for it, all of them struggling with choices that would determine humanity's future. But I am different now. I carried the architects' memories, understood their perspective, and could communicate with both sides in languages they would comprehend. I was exactly what they'd been hoping for, a bridge between worlds, a translator for concepts that spanned species. The storm outside was beginning to fade, replaced by the quiet that comes after major changes. Through enhanced senses, I could perceive the quantum patterns hidden in that silence, the probability fields shifting as countless futures collapsed into a single timeline. Rachel Morrison, an archaeologist, died tonight, but something new had been born. Something that might just save 2 species from destroying each other. And somewhere in the cosmic distances between stars, an ancient consciousness that had guided countless civilizations allowed itself a moment of hope that this time, perhaps, the gardeners had chosen wisely. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.